the Around the NFL podcast is working for the weekend.
You know we are. Welcome to a Christmas Eve edition of the Around the NFL podcast. Scattered across the Southland, I'm Dan Hanzus, Marc Sessler, Gregg Rosenthal. Yes, 'twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, I wish I prepared a line here that would have rhymed and it would have been cool, but I didn't. All I could tell you is Daddy's got a lot of work to do upstairs. Santa's coming, but the NFL sleeps for no one and nothing, including baby Jesus. And so here we are to give you a recap of everything that happened on the Saturday of Week 16. This is what we went with, Gravedigger.
It's called Holiday Beats.
Yeah, this, I don't know. I was looking for something a little more traditional. This is a Christmas in Hollis knockoff. This is like the NSYNC Christmas album.
This is pretty traditional here. I can go with this.
Anyway, let's talk. You guys, how'd you enjoy the football? Everybody working from home today is where the big holiday approaches.
I loved it. I think, it got tiresome working from home during Corona, obviously, and it's nice to be able to do both. But I just had a couple nice cups of coffee, making some breakfast, walking around in less clothing than I would normally. It was fantastic. And I'll tell you something else. You can feel that a big chunk of these teams are reaching the end. There's a very distinct feel to me for like Christmas week football is really you're starting to say goodbye to some of these teams. And it's about time. And others are rising up, and I enjoy them too.
And you don't have to talk about the Titans like that, Marc. Come on. Justin is here.
That is rude on this.
Not my
Justin
intention,
Graver,
but it's
Christmas
accurate.
Eve.
Says the guy in the Jet sweater.
Mark's not wrong, so whatever.
Jets are alive. And yeah, I mean, it's a big night. Who knows if Santa's gonna come? When I was at your house, Dan, last week, I liked how you wielded Santa's potential coming or not over your kids like a scepter. I like to see little daddy hands
you're not
really laying down.
You haven't
the law
figured
with
out
kids.
how to do the dad thing until you could weaponize Santa and have the children's behavior molded as a result. I mean, my boys want Nintendo Switch. You know what? They're probably getting Nintendo Switch in reality. In fact, I know they are. It's in the house.
I hope they don't listen to this on YouTube.
But, however, if they were to, I don't know, burn down the living room tonight, there will be no Nintendo Switch in the morning. So they need to take this thing across the goal line, as it were.
I don't know if that's the goal with Santa as a parent. I see what you're doing, and I think it's very effective. But to turn him into sort of a menacing deal breaker is maybe it's a new way it's a new approach.
Hey, listen, you take care of business in your home, Marc. I'll take care of mine. In my house, it's a house of fear. Okay.
All right.
All right. Let's get into the games. We're going to do 10 games today. We're going to leave the Sunday night game or the Saturday. This is annoying. The Saturday night Christmas Eve game. We're going to hit that and the 3 Christmas games Monday morning. So stay tuned for that. Right now, we're going to hit all the early and late afternoon games, starting with the game of the week. And dare I say, in the running for game of the year, let's head to Jerry World, where the Dallas Cowboys look to keep their NFC East hopes alive against the Eagles.
4th down and 10. Minshew back, 4-man rush. Here they come. He heaves it. Back into the end zone. The ball's on the ground, incomplete. The Cowboy defense was equal to the task that time. The Cowboys are going to take it over with 14 seconds left.
And that was, bongos to start a Christmas Eve gift for the Cowboys and their fans. And I endorse it. Because the Dallas Cowboys fell behind 10 points early. They fell behind 10 points again. I believe it was 27-17 at one point in this game. But they turned multiple Philadelphia turnovers into points and win 40-34 after getting, that stop on the final play, 4th down and long for Gardner Minshew, who played very well in the place of Jalen Hurts, who might not even be back next week. Keep an eye on that. But in the here and now, Minshew moved the ball against the Dallas defense. But Gregg, when Mike McCarthy made the decision near the goal line on the other end to kick the field goal, he said to his own defense, don't let them score a touchdown. It got a little hairy there, but they got the stop, and they're 11-4 as a result.
It got real hairy. He trusted his defense, who did not play that well except for the turnovers, although that's a big except for, and except for those last few plays, although that's the big except for, because a team that had a Golston in this game, the Dallas Cowboys, that is no quarterback hits, no sacks. Kind of crazy in that many plays.
Dirty Peter, I believe, is another one to look at.
Yeah, you could go with him.
Yeah.
They get the pressure there, back-to-back plays on 3rd and 4th down. 3rd down, it was Parsons who helped force a fumble earlier in the 4th quarter, and then 4th down, the interior push gets Minshew to let go of the ball. I hate when a team clocks it like Minshew did there with 30 seconds to go. I think if Jalen Hurts was in there, they might have a play called and not waste that down. But big ups to the Cowboys defense. We've been a defense team all year, and they made the big plays there.
And I mean, you mentioned the turnovers. In a game like this, where both teams were just sort of at different junctures, marching up and down the field, it felt insane to me. It just became one of those games where it's like you just trusted it would come down to the end. But the turnovers, they weren't getting a lot of pass rush. But Jaron Kearse, like that first interception he had leaping over a wide receiver, led to a touchdown. The fumble of Minshew led to a touchdown. The Deron Bland pick led to a field goal. So that's 17 points. That's the difference right there. And I mean, Minshew otherwise, and not to overrate who he is, but if you take away the turnovers, like his box score looked a lot like a lot of Jalen Hurts box scores, 350 something plus yards. Both wide receivers went for 100 plus. He just didn't operate on the ground that way, but he did have that big, 4th and 1 push as well. I thought Minshew, I know that they're not in must-win territory, but he can sneak them a win next week, no problem. I mean, they came very close to taking this.
I thought it was, I thought Dallas really left the door open on each of their last 2 possessions with some suspect play calling and decision-making by Dak on their final possession, where he went out of bounds on a scramble, on a first down scramble at 2:01 on the clock, which stopped the clock, and then with essentially one more snap before the 2-minute warning, instead of throwing it out of the back of the end zone, he takes a 9-yard sack, which allows not only the Eagles to get that stop and give them one more chance after the field goal, it also allowed Philadelphia to preserve a timeout and put them in much better position. I thought it was interesting, the quarterbacks in this game. Like you said, Minshew was very good. He wasn't perfect, and they made him pay for it when he wasn't perfect. He threw 2 interceptions. He could have thrown a third, but he also made a lot of big throws in this game. And right before the crucial Miles Sanders fumble on the penultimate drive for Philadelphia, I was saying to my dad, Keith, who we were watching the game together, I was like, I don't know if Minshew's going to lead them down the field here, but this guy is not scared. And it was kind of a bummer to see the situation get taken out of his hands there, but he did get one more chance. And Gregg, on the Dak side of things, that early on, the first possession, a pick 6, and you're thinking, oh my God, are they really going to blow this game with Hurts on the sideline? But he played really well. Some of those mental blunders at the end of the game, but in general, I thought he really played excellent football.
He was 24 for 24 when the Eagles played zone defense for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. To me, the biggest play of the game was the 52-yarder to T.Y. Hilton. 3rd and 30. It had been 2 years since any team had hit a 3rd down when it was 3rd and 30. T.Y. Hilton is back in our life. And Dak, when he throws a pretty ball, to me, it's for some reason, it's just prettier than other people. Like the CeeDee Lamb pass over the middle too, that was big in the game. But that throw to Hilton on 3rd and 30, which led to points, was part of an awesome performance. Other than the pick 6, he was incredible. They got a little lucky falling on the 3 fumbles. They recovered all 3 fumbles in this game, but Dak deserved it. It just shows you, though, defenses are a little overrated. It's like neither one of these defenses could get a stop. There was 1 punt in this game.
Yeah, I am concerned. I want to see what's going on with Lane Johnson. He left the game, went into the tent, and he was a little banged up last week too. So that's a major development for the Eagles. But I'm with you on Dak. I mean, I think he hit 16 straight throws after that pick 6. I mean, and when he's on and this offense functions with him completely flipped on, like the Cowboys are pretty unstoppable. So it's like, I guess for me, the hope is that, like, if they meet again, you get this version of Dallas, because this was sort of Dallas. I mean, they weren't perfect, but they were operating. I thought that they were not scared of the moment. The run game wasn't even as good as it's been in other games today, and they put up a ton of points. And so it makes me hopeful that Dallas doesn't melt away in the playoffs, as I feel like I've seen 37 times in my life.
Yeah, they still give me that feeling of a team that could do that. And like I'm saying, some of the mental mistakes and some of the play calling, it's like it was Are the Cowboys, when the rubber meets the road in the crucible of the playoffs, going to do the right things to win big games against top teams? We shall see. But one thing we do know, on Thursday when we were previewing this game, if they got beat by Minshew, they feel really fraudulent. And the fact that they took care of business here, they are coasting now to the playoffs and still in the mix here. And we wait to see where Jalen Hurts is physically and how the Eagles proceed there. But they still need 1 win in 2 games or a Dallas loss, and they will take the 1 seed. Philadelphia will. Should we keep moving, boys? I mean, it is Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Oh, who locked it up? Who locked it up? Oh, I'm sorry, everybody.
In a surprise move and a late Twitter lock, the Westling Bros locked the Cowboys.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, okay. Did they not get their initial lock in under the ahead of the Thursday preview?
No.
We seem to have deadlines in place at this point.
Yeah, Nick was a little busy, so you never know what's going on in the zoo.
Yeah, you never know. It could have been a gorilla on the loose, you know.
Hopefully they're listening. They are hosting Lakeisha and Link in Cincinnati, so that's
you know what? I hope they're not listening. I hope they're having a wonderful time together, sitting around the hearth. Merry Christmas to the Westlings and the Lakeisha, Link, everybody, and all the brothers and everybody. All right, let's keep moving now. Let's head to the Metrodome. It is no longer the Metrodome. It's a beautiful, gleaming temple to football, U.S. Bank Stadium, where the Vikings look to continue their insane winning ways in 1-score games. Of course, against the Giants, it had to come down to the last play.
61-yard try, right hash. Snap spot. Joseph with a big leg, and Merry Christmas, Minnesota Vikings fans! The Vikings have beaten the Giants 27-24. It's Joseph from 61! Wow!
I mean, we live in a world now, and that's Paul Allen, by the way, KFAN. You heard Brad Sham, the Sham God, before, where a kicker that's not even known as necessarily, a big-time kicker, Gregg Joseph, can just smoke a 61-yard field goal at the gun. I think that's one of the most underappreciated aspects of how pro football has changed, Marc Sessler, even since you and I joined the company way back in 2010. The kicking game is outrageous, and that's why it's celebrated on this show. Gregg Joseph, 61, bang, right down the middle, and the Vikings beat the Giants 27-24, prevents New York from clinching a playoff spot. Vikings already locked up the North, and this was another feel-good win for a team, Marc, that is 11-0 in 1-score games, and they can thank the kicker for that.
I mean, it was just days ago on the Thursday show where we were kind of challenging the Vikings for, maybe once this season, just win a big game, but make it, take the drama out of it. How about the zero drama element and just go do it and become a playoff team? And instead, this is naturally how they are. This is their DNA. This is woven into their bloodstream. And I thought it was just incredible to watch. Once again, the idea that they didn't top last week, but it's just like another version of the madness that unfolded last week and every other week. They're historically this team. No other team has done this. And I do think the thing is that I believe in is like Justin Jefferson setting the single season record today. TJ Hawkinson, who they traded for, that's totally completely worked. He had 13 catches for 100 plus today and 2 touchdowns. I just think it's a nod to the entire coaching staff that he melded right into the offense and has been a big difference maker in some of these huge games that have come down to the last second.
Yeah, with 2 minutes left in the game, this Vikings team is the best team ever. They're as focused as Marc Sessler, reading the highlights while cats are climbing all over him. And in the background, if you check it out on YouTube, he is locked in. And
he's
they
a cat
have now.
Man.
That's a professional.
He's not a cat lady. He's a cat man.
I wouldn't say that.
They have won more games in the final minute than any team in the history of the NFL. 6. They have won more one-possession games than any team in the history of the NFL. 11. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And people can just keep on pounding the table, myself included, for regression, but maybe the regression comes next year. Maybe regression isn't even a thing. I don't know, but 11-0 in 1-score games is crazy. The only reason it got to this point, I thought when the Vikings, because the way these coaches are now with the analytics, I thought when the Vikings had a chance, when they scored the touchdown to go up 7. I thought they were going to go for 2 and win the game. If they get 2, they're up 9. Instead, they kicked the extra point. They're up 8 points, and that left the door open for Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and the Giants, and a drive that ends with a 27-yard touchdown run right up the gut on 4th and 2 with 2:01 to play. Jones follows with a 2-point conversion. It's the Minnesota defense is not good, and we could apologize for doubting Minnesota. We could pump Vikings fans could puff out their chest and say you can't argue with results. I mean, we're going to make a deep run in the playoffs, but you see week after week that you can move the ball on the Vikings, and Daniel Jones looking like Phil Simms in Super Bowl 21 here was just the latest example of it. So that's not ever going to get better for the Vikings, but their ability to make big plays, and I was saying it to Keith today, TJ Hawkinson, great addition there. He's been a perfect his role is perfect, and it filled a void for them. But Justin Jefferson, every time this team needs a play down the stretch, that guy is there. And I know he's not going to win MVP, but take a look at every big drive when they've had all these dramatic wins. How many times has Jefferson made one of the big plays or the big play? And that's been a major difference. It's him. He is him.
And I
Put
think
him on
also,
the MVP list.
I believe he should be there.
He absolutely is MVP worthy. I know he won't get it probably because I think he's already like the
But
same.
now they do the top 5. I think, to me, he would be 3 or 4 on my personal list. So you could get
maybe this
votes
year's
at
a little
least.
different too, because you're not going to give it to Cousins, because usually when the wide receiver has a massive year, you give it to his quarterback. But Cousins doesn't fall into that category. Maybe this is the year where a wideout could sneak in and take that trophy, but he certainly deserves it.
I could see voters splitting their votes to some degree, where MVP goes Mahomes, but Offensive Player of the Year, that Jefferson dominates that vote. I just wonder if that's how that could play out. One Giants thing about this, because I don't know what they're going to do with Daniel Jones. I think he's been better than advertised in a lot of these games. He's had high profile gaffes, but really for the most part, I think he threw his first pick in weeks and weeks this week, and he's throwing to Isaiah Hodgins, Richie James, and Darius Slayton. There's just very little around him, and to even see the Giants in some of these games, I mean, it helped to see Barkley play better today than that slump he was in. But I feel like this is a sinking balloon, and we're just catching on the way down.
Yeah, I think Jones.
See, I disagree with that. I thought the Giants played well in this game, and I think they had 445 yards of offense. 334 through the air through Jones, and their defense is not good enough to get stops against this Vikings offense in a big spot. But they also, I thought in general, this was a back and forth game that they lose on a 61-yard field goal on the road. I think the Giants are going to make the playoffs, especially with Washington not being able to pull off an upset today. And I think I would not be surprised if they're in another very close game down the stretch, because I think they've refound themselves a little bit when they were in that slump before the Washington game. I think they're going to hang around and be a tough out every week.
Well, I think they're going to probably, I could see a high percentage likeliness that they play the Vikings again in the playoffs.
And
but
that'll be a close game.
I'm more saying, I just think if you run into a Niners team or the Eagles again, this Giants team to me is are they going to sneak into the playoffs? Yes. I was on the side of wanting them to be fun and joyful, and it's they're a bit fraudulent, but they are what they are. And I do still think they've been well coached from wire to wire this entire season. It is a win for Brian Daboll.
Yeah, the results for Week 16, spoiler alert, is going to help the Giants' chances of making the playoffs. So they lose this game because the Cowboys won. The Cowboys all but assured themselves of getting that 5 seed versus the 6. But Giants are much less likely to fall out of this. And the Vikings are still alive here for the 2 seed. They are the 2 seed. And that really does make a big difference. So that's something that them and the 49ers are playing for down the stretch.
All right, let's move on now. Speaking of the 49ers, they welcomed those Commanders into their building. And they just suffocate their opponents. It happened again.
Birdie under center. Toss going to fake it and roll to his left and will throw wide open. Kittle underneath. 20. Block. 10. 5. George Kittle. Touchdown again. Touchdown! San Francisco! What action there by Brock Purdy.
Well, rocking and rolling, baby, on the keeper. He's going to hold this football as long as he can.
Man, brocking and rolling is some real dad energy. I'm in, though. Greg Papa and Tim Ryan with the call, KNBR. They're inevitable, these 49ers right now. Brock Purdy threw 2 more touchdown passes to George Kittle, and the Niners take out the Commanders 37-20. That's 8 straight wins for San Francisco. And Greg, Purdy is now 3-0 since taking over for Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not doing it alone. The whole team is playing well right now, but he has fit in nicely, and they are just rolling.
Yeah, I think this was perfect for them because they were really tested offensively. I know they had big scores where Kittle got wide open, and Shanahan coming out of halftime really picked on the linebacker situation and created some mismatches that Kittle took advantage of. But before that, they were struggling to move the ball. And I think that was good because Purdy had to make plays under pressure. They got unlucky with an interception that Juwan Jennings dropped. And they were tested, I think, by a playoff caliber defense. It's not a playoff caliber offense for Washington, but it's a playoff caliber defense. And so they were tested, but in the second half, it was just like downhill. They had 4 out of 5 possessions in the second half that started in 49ers territory because Heineke kept turning it over, and there was another special teams play, and so they just kept getting the ball. It honestly could have been a 50-burger in this game because they were stopped on short drives in Washington territory so many times in the second half.
Yeah, like when we talk about, maybe defense doesn't matter in that Philly-Dallas game, and you're right, in that situation. Like the Niners defense keeps mattering week to week. I thought they completely turned Tom Brady's season into total darkness a couple weeks ago. They basically unplugged Geno Smith a week ago. I mean, kind of changing that narrative, the way we viewed Geno Smith changed. And they just got Taylor Heineke benched. I mean, it's like they're that early goal line stand that they had, which flipped around into the Ray McLeod 71-yard sweep with a great block by Christian McCaffrey. It's like their stops turn into points. And like they had the same thing. I thought the 4th and 1 stop of Heineke when it was 14-7, and then bang, seconds later, it's 21-7 because Purdy is, overcomes the interception, completely data wipes that from his memory, and mind melds with George Kittle, which he did for the rest of the game. Then they've got a strip sack and an interception. They just, like to your point, Greg, it was just downhill. They never stopped, and Washington is a very compromised team. They kind of remind me of the Giants in the sense that there are things you like, but if you get caught into the bad game flow and you start to get behind, I don't really trust Washington to work their way out of it. And I don't really care if that's Carson Wentz or Taylor Heineke at quarterback.
I kind of hated I understand everyone's aggressive all the time now, but that decision by Riverboat Ron, 4th and 1 at his own 34. It's like
you got to convert it if you're gonna. You gotta do it.
I mean, you better love your quarterback and trust your offense because against this team, if you don't get it, guess what? You don't get it, and then 2 plays later, it's 21-7. And I know then Washington came back and scored again, and you give them credit for that to keep the game interesting. But that, to me, the game felt over at that point. And a couple of things that jump out to me, Greggy, we haven't talked. I feel like we haven't talked about Nick Bosa a ton on the show this year, or maybe I'm just forgetting it. But he's been a beast this year. He definitely deserves serious consideration for Defensive Player of the Year. He's up to 17.5 sacks now. He had 2 sacks and a forced fumble in this game. And then the other part of it, obviously, Carson Wentz replaces Heineke. And I would anticipate, Greggy, that Carson Wentz stays in the lineup now because it just felt like Riverboat had an itchy trigger this whole time with Taylor.
Yeah, it's funny because I think Heineke was so lucky all season playing poorly and getting by, and this was the reverse. I thought he played a good first half. They get stuffed on the goal line where Fred Warner makes a great play in the running game, or else the Washington could have been up 14-7. Heineke made a number of good throws and good decisions, and then 2 quick turnovers in a row, which one came on the Bosa strip sack, which I don't know if that was really on Heineke, and then an interception. And Wentz came in and played well. In one drive, he had like the most Carson Wentz-y stuff happen, making a miraculous play as he's falling to his knees that turns into 25 yards, a total dime for a touchdown, but also had what should have been a turnover by Wentz too. But he got the touchdown, got another good drive after that. And my guess is you're right. They play the Browns next week. They are still in position for the playoffs, but only half a game up. So it's wide open for that 7 spot. They have the Browns and the Cowboys to finish up. And the one good thing I think think they get Chase Young back, and he made a difference in this game. He looked good. He wasn't coming off an injury looking bad, so that's one thing to be happy about.
They also have a star in Jahan Dotson. I mean, they really have weapons, because if it's him and McLaurin, the one thing I'd say about Heineke that was different than Wentz, when he came in for the first kind of month of Heineke for all the issues, he had great chemistry with McLaurin. Like, the splits were completely different. And then they've just become such a ball possession ground team. That's what they want to be, and they couldn't do that today to some degree. But I know we don't care about this, but I would love to know what the majority of the locker room thinks about Wentz in there over Heineke, the person. I just do. I just have a sense that Carson Wentz seems to have struggled to attach himself to a locker room everywhere he's gone.
Heineke slammed his helmet down when he was taken out of the lineup and was seen arguing with Rivera. And just one quick thing, Dan, I think you're right. I think Bosa probably won the Defensive Player of the Year today. Just the way the Cowboys defense has fallen apart and the way Bosa's playing.
Yeah, I think Heineke is a guy that is liked in that locker room, but if the coach doesn't think he's a good quarterback, it makes sense why they would look to Wentz as a spark here. And here is, speaking of Wentz, what was that thing Colleen did on Tuesday? Was she simmed all of the holiday films, or somebody did and she was reading it?
Like a sim watched 1,000 hours of Hallmark-esque holiday films and created its own script.
This quote from Carson Wentz feels like a sim. Like they uploaded every Taylor Heineke pass ever into Wentz, and then a reporter stuck a recorder in his face. This is Carson Wentz on Heineke's first half. I thought he played well. I thought he was dealing. I thought Taylor played well. Obviously, the way the game ended was strange the way ended. That's from Nikki Jahavala.
He's so afraid to offend anyone, and I don't blame him at this point.
As we all know, decided to really go ahead and start to take command.
Not too late, Carson. Not too late.
And Greg, the calculators, we go to our first break. It's Washington needs to win their last 2 games. The Giants need to lose their last 2 games. Does that sound about right?
No, I mean, Washington's in the playoffs right now, so they're trying to hold off Detroit and Seattle and Green Bay, and they're half a game up going into the final 2.
Man, NFC got real sloppy in the back of that wild card race.
Yep.
Here I am thinking Washington was cooked, but they are very much alive. So Wentz has a big opportunity for some personal redemption. Let's take a break and we will roll on. All right, we're back. In case you're just joining us, it's Christmas Eve, and we're talking football because we can't get enough, baby. All right, let's move on. San Francisco takes care of business. How about the Cincinnati Bengals, who are rolling themselves, and they have the Patriots up next, and what felt like a blowout turned into something entirely different.
Mac Jones waiting for the shotgun snap, hands it off. Stevenson stacked up, going backward, tackle.
Ball's
the ball
out.
Is out.
It's out.
The Bengals are celebrating.
Turnover
They've
time.
got it.
Turnover
Bengals
time.
have recovered the
turnover.
football. That should be coffin nails.
Bam, bam, bam.
Oh, my goodness. Greg, if I didn't hate the Patriots so much, I would feel bad for them. These last 2 weeks have been insane.
Throw that Vikings game in there, too.
My
Thanksgiving.
Goodness. Dan Horde and Dave Lapham with the call, WCKY. Here's the breakdown here, and this is one of my games. The Bengals absolutely dismantle the Patriots in the first half in Foxborough. It is 22-0 at half. I believe the first downs between the teams, I believe the number was 22 for Cincinnati and 3 for New England.
Marc.
It was that ugly. And then the Patriots do what the Patriots do. They pick up a defensive score, a pick 6, and all of a sudden, all right. And they miss the extra point. It's 22-6. And then all of a sudden, the Cincinnati offense goes totally cold. After Joe Burrow threw 3 touchdown passes and the Bengals offense just did whatever they wanted in bad conditions in New England, they go cold. Meanwhile, on 3rd and forever from midfield, Mac Jones throws up a prayer that gets swatted from one hand into Jacoby Myers' hands for a touchdown. And now they're within 10 points. They kick a field goal. And then all of a sudden they have the ball after a turnover by Jamar Chase, the Patriots do. And they're going down the field only for Stevenson to fumble the football inside the 10 when it looked like the Patriots are going to have one of the more unlikely wins of the year after the most unlikely loss. So in the end, it was a crushing loss for New England. Final score was 22-18. So New England has a chance to really stay in the mix in the AFC playoff race. Instead, they're in a lot of trouble now. Cincinnati's winning streak extends, even though you're not feeling too hot about it after you watch the last 2 quarters.
I mean, or the first 2 quarters against the Bucs last week, where Tampa Bay looked, playoff ready all of a sudden before falling off a cliff. I think Zach Taylor said it. Like, when you're up 22-0, 15-0, you got to find a way to like put these teams away if you want to be a Super Bowl team. And they're not a team I worry about slump wise. I think Burrow's turnovers occasionally, like today, caused a big problem for them. And but who do you trust more to work themselves out of it? I mean, they've essentially offed New England at this point. I do find from a New England side that if you look at the way the last minute of the last 2 games finished, or the last 10 seconds, it's mistake prone. It looks disjointed. It's very un-Belichickian, and it's an odd, strange end to a season that started this morning with rumors that Bill O'Brien might return as the offensive coordinator next season.
The funny thing is, it's like, I'm thinking as a Patriots fan, it's like, oh, great, I would love a Bill O'Brien at this point. It's like, that would help. Yeah. Now, that said, they were so close to what would have been like a stirring victory, and I didn't hate their strategy at the end. They were trying to make the Bengals burn timeouts. They were running the ball well. It was the only 2 minutes of the game I watched, I'll admit, is the end. So I got that dagger right at the end. And that probably should be a forward progress, like blown dead. I think that's a pretty clear call in most situations. And they answered it after the game saying they just thought he still had his legs moving, but that's not what forward progress is about. Once you're moving backwards and you're held for like 3 straight yards, they'll call that. But that's been this Patriots season. I think all the good fortune the Patriots have had for 20 years, it's like it's cashing in the other way this year. Just pile it up all in one year.
Well, if it makes you, I don't want to worry you, Greg, but if that's the theory that's actually taking hold, imagine being a fan of a team that hates the Patriots and feeling like that happened for 20 straight years. So,
well, maybe it will for the Patriots. You could have 18
now. More.
Well, here's one thing in your favor here. The Patriots would have knocked out the Jets with a win here if Stevenson had won that game. But
I know, and it felt and also not for nothing, but old Zeuser locked up the Bengals. And it's 22-0, and I'm coasting to the finish line, and then all of a sudden this game gets totally bizarre and wacky, and it did feel like they had the Bengals right where they wanted. They had them on their heels. They were running the ball really well, and Stevenson, and it's just a kind of a snapshot of their season in general, the frustration of New England to just do the type of things that we kind of just expected them to do. But you saw another defensive score, like I said. Marcus Jones, it was Marcus Jones, right? Who had the pick six? Marcus
made
Jones,
some history.
That was a beautiful play by Marcus Jones, who not only picked it off, he then tight rope down the sideline for the touchdown. Kendrick Bourne makes a beautiful catch in this game. Mac Jones didn't do a lot here, but he made a few throws. So it was kind of a rip your heart out loss for New England. And for the Bengals, it's one of those things like, I don't know what happened here, but we did win just like last week. They don't know what happened in the first half either. And Mark, I guess the question is, does that make you nervous that 4 of their last 8 quarters have been terrible? Or does it make you feel more confident that you came out of both of those games with wins? So,
it doesn't concern me. Not that and brushing it off is nothing, but their slumps are different than other teams' slumps. I think the Bills, we could say, they didn't lose during their slump, and the Bengals are finding ways to win these games. To me, it's like this is part of the roadmap that you go through. And I just look at one thing about New England. Like, I feel like this is a theme this year of a couple really good defenses that got completely hung out to dry by their offenses. I think of New England because it's been a really well-coached defense and been typical for most of the season. And like Denver, it's like these defensive players, their text threads must be absolutely on fire with what they're dealing with from the offensive side of the ball. I would love to read them. I think they'd be very spicy.
I would too. Marcus Jones quickly is the first player or the second player in NFL history to have a career 40-yard catch, punt return, and interception return. The only other person in NFL history to ever do that is Deion Sanders. And Marcus Jones has already done it as a rookie. Not just, this is talking about entire career. He had a big catch on offense too. And your lock sound there, Dan, reminds me of when we started this lock competition 6 years ago. I went back and listened to the last time we did a Christmas Eve show
Oh, wow.
Just to see if I could get some fun stuff there. And the lock competition had just started back then in the middle of that season, actually, just kind of impromptu. Let's take a listen.
At the Marc Sessler, 3-0. Whoa, we are flying with the locks now. And we've put it into the safe. We spin, the wheel thing, or like what is it? It's like a circular.
It's almost like a pirate ship wheel, almost.
Kind of like we spin the pirate ship wheel lock, and then we leave it there, and then we go get it on Saturday.
Don't need to think about it again.
Spin the pirate.
I gotta wait till
lock.
Sunday for the Steelers. Bad job. I should have picked the lock that was on Saturday.
Hey.
Poor showmanship.
No lollipops today, anyway.
You're no Liberace, Gregg. But anyway,
strong silent type.
It's true. Man, Liberace comes up a lot on the show, and great to hear Chris, of course, and Greggy. Just think of all the joy, and like the Grinch coming down from the mountain trying to kill the lock segment. Shame on you.
That's part of the fun. I just like we were still talking showmanship.
Yeah.
Back then. 6 years
no
ago.
different
There were
than the
so
episode
many
from
little
2 days
moments.
ago.
He called me the strong and silent type, which was a running joke, and the whole thing. It was nice to hear his voice. I remember we were in the studio that night.
Yes, always good to hear Chris, especially on Christmas Eve. Lael Collins, by the way, went out with a knee injury. Keep an eye on that. Their offensive line really crumbled Cincinnati after that. Okay, let's move now to Soldier Field, where the Bills, they know that Cincinnati's breathing right down their neck as they try to lock up home field advantage in the AFC. Time to take care of business against the Bears.
Josh Tate's going to keep it, going to try to run it himself around the right side. Josh heads to the end zone. He is in. Touchdown, Buffalo. Josh Allen runs it in from 3 yards out. Touchdown, Buffalo Bills.
The Bills did get it done. Maybe not as easy as they expected, at least early on. But in the end, Devin Singletary, James Cook, both had long TDs in the third quarter. Allen scored, as you heard, and Buffalo coasted to a 35-13 win in one of the coldest games ever played in Chicago. Yeah, I should mention that as I tee up Marc Sessler here. All across the country, just hideous weather, and luckily we're not traveling this week, but some of these games really were impacted by the weather. One of the games, Tennessee and Houston, even had to be pushed back an hour because of a power grid situation. Unbelievable. Anyway, get into it, Marc. How did the Bills win this game?
I think the weather had a real effect on this, as it did on a lot of these games you mentioned. They just weren't really the same operation through the air. It wasn't like completely visible to the eye that they couldn't move the ball, Josh Allen, through the air. But like what stood out to me today was because mid-season we're kind of questioning the balance of the offense. Like if they needed to, could they really run the ball in a situation and do it without a major issues? And today was the day where I think we've seen that bubble up, especially Allen against the Dolphins. I thought had a big day at another 41 yards in that touchdown we just heard today. So that's part of their offense right now, especially in weather like this. But it was Devin Singletary, you mentioned, 106 yards. James Cook, 99. They had 254 yards at 8.2 yards per carry off 31 of totes. And what I loved about it was the 2 touchdowns you mentioned was like they were just really looking for an explosive spark, and back-to-back drives, you get Cook and Singletary blasting for long touchdowns, and it really just put it away. On the flip side, the reason I thought, we've seen these Bears hang in these games, and it's always been about Justin Fields. They had a good plan for Fields. They were dealing with they have nothing in their offense through the air, and so it's him or nothing. And he had, when the Bills at one point were up 21-0, had 181 yards. Fields had 7, and he finished on the ground with 11 yards off 7 carries. So if you're going to take that element out of Chicago's attack, see you later, Bears.
Bears still got a chance for the number 1 pick. By the way, they're only half a game behind.
They've quietly kept losing the last 2 months.
Yeah. Right. They're close every week. And then, look, the Bills clinched their 3rd straight AFC East today. That's impressive. With 2 weeks to go in this division that we were saying looked like the best division in football, they end up being the class of it by far. I always say how hard it is to be the best team year after year, and we look up and here it is. It's the Bills and the Chiefs again, and you nailed it, Marc. I mean, being able to run to win is really important for them. And it wasn't like those running backs loaded up on like 50 carries. It was 12 for 106, 11 for 99. That's a really good sign for them.
That is, for a Chicago fan base that know they're going to watch a loss. And I don't know how many people, I'm sure there were a lot of empty seats there, but the temperature at kickoff was 9 degrees with a minus 12 wind chill, only 3 degrees warmer than the record low for a Bears home game. And it's their coldest road game for Buffalo by temperature since at least 1967. I mean, what causes people to go to these games? I respect it, but it does strike me as a whiff of madness.
There were a ton of empty seats. There were a ton of empty seats in Foxborough, in Cleveland, and I assume in this one, Mark, but I didn't really check out this one.
I didn't track the seat scenario that closely, to be honest, but I will say
I thought you were a professional. What happened?
Well, there's a lot going on. Like the one time I do recall getting like tangible, I wouldn't know if it was like deathly frostbite, but I couldn't feel my toes even like in the middle of the night. Was the first game I ever went to was a Week 15 Chiefs-Giants game in East Rutherford, New Jersey, and it was like this kind of temperature, and it was like, what? I had the same question as you, Dan. What am I doing here?
There is, as anyone that grew up in the Northeast knows, if you go to a game at Giant Stadium in the 80s, 90s, into the 2000s, and it is a late kickoff, a 4 p.m. kickoff, and you are on the side of the stadium that is in the shade, you are going to suffer for many hours. And I'm sure you were on the wrong side of the stadium on that day, my friend.
Well, I'm a child. I'm not, you can't like have whiskey and do things that would warm up the body. You're just sort of left out to dry.
Right, exactly. All right, let's move to Charlotte, where the team of ATL looked to keep things rolling against the Panthers, fighting for their playoff lives in the soggy NFC South. This one did not go to plan.
Trips left. The snap, screen pass, back to DJ. He's got the 5, reaching toward the end zone. Ball comes out at the end. Touchdown, Carolina, DJ Moore. And the Panthers lead it 30-7. We're about 24 minutes and 12 seconds away from a game against Tampa next week with first place in the division on the line.
What?
Good call.
What? Do we have a Gregg Rosenthal? What? DJ Moore with the score there, but this was about the running game for the Panthers. D'Onta Foreman ran for a career-high 165 yards and a touchdown. The Panthers had a franchise record 320 yards on the ground. And they defeat the team of around the NFL 37-23. Greg, how do you give up 320 yards on the ground in this spot?
It felt like
Why
a moral...
is the sad ATN music, team of ATN music is back?
I know. It felt like a moral victory.
What?
It was 240 at halftime. I got to Google what's the all-time record for rushing yards in a game. I mean, they were on pace. They were on pace for it at that point. So
never good.
Yeah, never good. I mean, 5 plays, 78 yards on the first drive, and they were all runs. The first play of the game was a 35-yard run, and they were just huge holes for D'Onta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard to run through, and bad tackling in the secondary by the Lions. And it started that way, and you just that happens sometimes, and you figure like, oh, this is going to get under control, and it never really got under control. The Panthers set a franchise record with that rushing total, but they also set a franchise record just for yardage. I mean, they've been around a while now. 570 yards is a lot, and Sam Darnold, when he had to make a play in this game, made a lot of high-level throws. They just destroyed this team, the Lions defense at least.
The Panthers
not offensively, but it was crazy.
The Panthers had 7 runs, to your point, Greg, of 20 yards or more. And the Lions had been very stout against the run defensively in recent weeks. They had been averaging just 84 yards rushing per game in the last 5 weeks. And then Foreman and Hubbard both go over the century mark in the first half. So,
in
Mark,
the first half?
Yeah.
It was the first time that had happened in any game since D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart. It's insane.
Yeah, and Mark, I guess this is, we'll see what this means for Detroit. Is this another game, by the way? Temperature is 20 degrees at kickoff, wind chill of 9. Maybe this is a dome team that just bit it, but we'll see if they bounce back from this. This seems like a pretty humbling loss.
Well, I think Goff splits at home versus not only on the road, but like when he's been outdoors, are unbelievably varied. Like he's not the same person in this outdoor weather, and so I do have a question.
Wasn't his box score awesome in this game?
Well, I'm coming into this game like literally 90% of his production has been like in indoor weather, and so I think that helps them the way they're built too. To me, it's like I'm not sure the Lions. They've been so improved, but like they were kind of due, I thought, for a step back at some point. I just am surprised by Carolina being able to dominate this way. They've been really hot and cold because they had 64 yards rushing against the Bengals. It's like, all right, well, that plan's out the window. Then the next week they put up 240 against the Falcons on the ground, then 36 against the Ravens, then 185 against a good Broncos team, then today. So it's like when it works, they're essentially unstoppable. But then the next week they completely the bed. So I'm not, it's like I don't know who to trust in any of these situations.
Right. They're going to play the Bucs no matter what happens on Christmas, and they are in a win-and-in situation. If Carolina beats Tampa next week, they are in first place, and then they could clinch the division. I think Darnold makes a huge difference the way he's playing. He's played the cleanest month, I think, of his career. Maybe he had some more spectacular moments with the Jets, but he's just made good decisions. And he wasn't like the headline here today, but there were a couple spots in the game where they needed a throw, and he made some really high-level throws, and they needed to keep scoring because the Lions offensively were fine in this game. Goff, I thought, actually played pretty well overall. They were stopped inside the 10-yard line twice, once on downs with, I think it was a batted pass, and once they fumbled a snap on a first down. They put up 380 yards and 23 points. Like it was really their defense had no hope in this game.
I'm happy for Sam Darnold, who's getting another shot at this NFL thing after a horrendous start to his career. And it is within the realm of reality here that Sam Darnold starts a home playoff game. This could happen. Tampa Bay is not a team to trust. Keep an eye on this because the Panthers now, and I know it was a disappointing loss last week against Pittsburgh, but to bounce back like this, that is pretty impressive. They had 500 yards in this game, the most ever on the coldest day that the history of that stadium.
I really hope that Steve Wilkes gets a legitimate, real chance to continue as coach because I think this is one of the better interim runs there's been.
Yeah, you wonder if they lost two straight, whether it would happen. But today it felt like, man, I think he's going to wind up keeping this job. I did notice Dan Campbell, I thought he blinked at one point. There was a 4th and 1 at his own 36, and they had been moving the ball well. And that was a play that they've gone for in most situations all year, right before halftime. And he decides to punt it away, and his lousy defense ends up giving up points in that situation. Anyway, you didn't see the aggressive call from Dan Campbell on a day they needed to, but it wouldn't have mattered.
And by the way, I do see that Goff had a major box score today. I was more mentioning that coming into this game, it was one question about the Lions because they've been so explosive at home that can you go win on the road in a big spot,
Well, they're home next week against the Bears, and then they might be on the road week 18. That could be the Sunday night game in a cold weather situation against Green Bay. All is not lost for a team around the NFL. They had been on a run here, but if you win these last two games, you're probably in the playoffs.
Yes, just that we're going to stay positive here. I don't like giving up 320 ground yards in a game. It makes me nervous that they've been exposed in a profound way. But we're
it's not going to happen again. They're not going to do that again. Not exactly, at least.
Right. All right, let's take a break, and we'll roll through the rest of the games. All right, welcome back. We have a 3-team race atop the AFC, trying to get that number 1 seed, the all-important bye and home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs. We know the Bills won. We knew the Bengals won. How about the Chiefs? Did they keep pace against the Seahawks?
Kelsey, 3-point stance to the left. Here comes an inside blitz. Mahomes reads it, moves to his right, keeps the ball in his right hand, trying to stay alive, dives for the far front pylon. Did he get it? Are they going to give it to him? Touchdown! Kansas City, all precincts finally reporting, and they give it to Mahomes on another rushing touchdown, the 12th of his career, and the Chiefs have broken it open at 23-3.
Whoa. You said it was just the 12th rushing touchdown in Mahomes' career? That can't be right. Is that right?
Feels like they all were to win the game, though. It's crazy.
I think so. Patrick Mahomes, with Jalen Hurts out with an injury, has a chance here to really put the MVP race in his favor, and he got it done today, throwing 2 touchdown passes, no interceptions, adding that rushing score that you heard. And the Chiefs do take care of business and move to 12-3 with a 24-10 win over the fading Seahawks. That was Mitch Holthus, of course, for WDAF. And Greggy, yes, is this another KC just kind of grinding their way through these things? What did you take out of this game?
That their defense needed to step up. I've really wanted their defense to show me a little something more, and they did for the most part. It was a lot of stopping the Seahawks on 4th downs, like in their territory. The Seattle could not finish drives. They turned it over on downs 3 times, and Geno threw a red zone interception. So that was 4 times they were inside the 40 with 0 points to speak of. But Chris Jones was dominant. I think he's second in the league in terms of interior pass rushers and pressures. He had 4 quarterback hits. L'Jarius Sneed was really good against DK Metcalf when he was lined up against him. And the defense kind of just did what they needed to do and waited for the offense to put him away. They're going to get the 1 seed here if they can just win a couple division games against Denver and Vegas. I think that's huge because in the AFC, in theory, Buffalo, Cincinnati, like you don't have to play 2 of those teams. You would only have to play 1 of those teams if you can get the 1 seed.
I mean, was this another miniature? I don't want to overemphasize it, but maybe come down to earth or step back for Geno Smith, because what I kept seeing early on was that on key 4th down plays, he was throwing short of the sticks that created 2 turnovers on downs, and I think they had 3 or 4 of those situations in Kansas City territory where, I know they're compromised. Like Kenneth Walker it seemed like he had a better game today, but you don't have Tyler Lockett, and it's just like, they're not able to. This isn't the same environment that Geno Smith was sort of thriving in a month and a half ago, 2 months ago.
No, this was one of the coldest days in Kansas City in Arrowhead history, too, which is maybe why Mahomes' numbers were pretty low and they struggled at some points. But yeah, they're not protecting him. I think Charles Cross, their tackle, went out of this game, the Seahawks tackle, and Geno was getting hit. Geno was missing Lockett, and you're right. They kept throwing it like 8 yards on 4th and 9, and it was killer.
Gregg, let me get the calculator out. Help us out, because obviously I'm confused about it. So the Giants are in great position even with the loss still. What does the rest of this NFC wildcard field look like right now?
Well, it's pretty simple. With the Commanders' lead, they're only half a game up on Detroit and Seattle. Seattle's got the tiebreaker there, but that's all they got to do is make up 1 game in 2 weeks. Commanders, Lions, Seahawks, maybe the Packers in that mix.
Well, there's also the fact that if those two Seattle and Detroit get tangled, that insane game from earlier in the year that Seattle won 48-45, they win the head-to-head over Detroit too.
If you want a real positive sign for the Chiefs, that's the first time in 10 games this season that the Chiefs did not commit a turnover. That's kind of been a little bit of an issue for him this year. So cleaner football. Harrison Butker cleaned things up. He's been off this season. So we'll see where they're at as we finish out the regular season. And by the way, Andy Reid on Christmas Eve was given a gift by his team in the locker room. Listen in.
Hey. Thank you. May you all get a gift as great as this. Cheeseburgers of paradise, baby.
So they gave him a wrapped gift, and it was a cheeseburger in the box, and because he likes cheeseburgers, because he's Andy Reid. What percentage of the locker room, Marc, do you think got the cheeseburgers in paradise callback to Jimmy Buffett, like 1977?
I think it still gets played pretty widely at pubs and things like that. I think you could still have heard it in college in various pubs and taverns, maybe, but I'm with you that it's an Andy Reid reference. It's dated. Andy Reid was probably talking about it, 30 years ago. So, yeah, you're aging yourself. My one little takeaway was if you go back earlier in that interview when they gave him the box, they wrapped it and everything, and he shook it violently. And so I was like, we knew it was a cheeseburger. I'm like, that thing is going to be in absolute tatters when he ultimately opens the packaging, and it was completely fine. So it's like someone must have speared it from head to toe so that it wouldn't get ramshackled.
It was a classic spear scenario on that cheeseburger.
That's a good gift giving.
Great work by Travis Kelce there, spearing the burger.
Great work by Marc, noticing that and then commenting it on the podcast.
Well,
Let's move to Baltimore, where it was also very cold. Man, it's nice living in Southern California sometimes. It's 73 degrees today in California. No joke. Watch the games outside.
Huntley out of the shotgun in the empty backfield. Lobs in the back of the end zone. Looking for Demarcus Robinson. He makes the catch. Touchdown, Ravens. And the red zone drought is over. A terrific touch pass from Tyler Huntley to Demarcus Robinson in the back side of the end zone. And this crowd is happy for the first time this afternoon.
Hey, it hasn't been easy for the Baltimore Ravens on offense for a while now, and it wasn't easy again. But they did get it done. Jerry Sandusky with the call, WBAL. Tyler Huntley threw first half touchdown pass to Demarcus Robinson. The Ravens defense did their job, kept the Falcons and Desmond Ridder out of the end zone. Final score 17-9. 10 wins, Marc, for the Ravens. They're going to the dance. And another game without Lamar Jackson, but they've won 2 of the 3 without him now.
Yeah, I mean, this would be another team I'd point to where the defense could quietly be like, excuse me, attack, please start to operate on in somewhat functional level. I mean, they're just getting by. Like, before that Demarcus Robinson touchdown, they ran the ball 11 times. They really are very one-dimensional. I think we know that about them. Outside of Mark Andrews, you're getting like guys with 14 yards on the entire day. They just don't have anything there right now with Duvernay also out and Rashad Bateman. But it was their defense. Their defense is marvelous, and it kind of makes you think like,
marvelous.
You know, if they're going to win an ugly playoff game, you could do it with this defense, I think. All right, I wish I had not used that word, but like they basically clipped the Falcons. This looked like also, I feel like 90% of Falcons games are exactly the same in the sense that they just don't quite get it done on offense. They had 4 drives inside the Baltimore 20 that resulted in 3 field goals and a loss on downs. And you know, it was just little moments where Tyler Algier, we know he's been great. He's my guy, but he was stuffed on 4th and goal with 6 minutes to go. Yes, and like he just that to me felt like the game was over. I mean, they even got the ball back again, and they were down, 17-6, and Desmond Ridder, second game, got his handoff messed up and kind of clipped Algier as he was running on a second and goal situation. That just led to another field. They just could not punch in touchdowns against a very good Ravens defense. While the Ravens offense, they can run the ball and do very little else. And so this game felt exactly what you thought it would be in this weather.
I mean, they were in the playoffs. This was a huge win for them, especially
we talked
with
about
Pittsburgh
that.
and
They were
Cincinnati.
very vulnerable, Greggy. If they would have lost this game, things would have gotten very wonky. So good for them, and they get to enjoy their Christmas.
They are an uninspiring playoff entry right now, though.
I hear you, but to me, you throw Lamar back in there, and it's a different world. I know their offense had struggled with him, but I just mean in a playoff situation, let's say right now the playoff matchup would be them. Spoiler alert, at Jacksonville, at the AFC South champion. And if you're the Ravens, you're like, okay, we can party with that. But you're right, they feel like they're back in 1999. Here out of their last 6 games, here are 5 of the scores: 13-3, 10-9, 16-4, 3-13, 17-9.
Yeah.
These are boring ass games.
Did you say 16-4? That can't be right.
16-14. Yeah, against the Steelers. 16-4 would have been fun.
Sammy Watkins had a 40-yard catch in this. I think I was killing him on Thursday's show, so credit to him.
The whole marvelous thing, sometimes I feel like the Ravens defense gets a pass and we forget about some of those marvelous meltdowns they've had this season. To see them in a big spot down the stretch and maybe in January playoff where they need to get a stop and get it done. But in general, if this defense hasn't been as good as it's been for most of the season, they're 5-10 instead of 10-5. That's how kind of off this offense has been for much of the year. So
they've given up over 20 points once since early November, and even going back then, it was just low 20s. I think that Roquan Smith is another trade, like TJ Hawkinson. Some of these teams have made good trades. Like Roquan Smith was a transformative addition for them.
All right, and by the way, bye-bye Falcons. Holy God, you are eliminated, and I am so happy because for 2 years straight, you've been an annoying, boring team that just gets in the way, and now we don't have to think about you anymore. Go figure out who your quarterback is and all that other good stuff. We'll see you in September. Let's move on. I don't care. Whatever. Sometimes Sometimes you just got to say goodbye to a team. You know what I'm saying, Marc Sessler? Sometimes it's just like, later.
I do. I think we've run out of enthusiasm for that operation. It's time
just
for them
getting
to
rid
go.
of some of these NFC South teams. Bye.
It's the only one
let's go
so
to Cleveland. Let's keep doing it. All right, Cleveland. Let's go. It's Christmas Eve.
4th and 10 to throw. Saints rush 3. Watson standing.
Reindeer coming out.
Now he'll pull it down. He'll run, but he'll get caught.
Is it a
He'll
Rudolph
get
year?
tackled. And that is going to be it. Carl Granderson wraps him up at the 25-yard line for the sack. Saints defense, answer the call. Merry Christmas.
Love that Rankin and Bass Rudolph special. Obviously, it's iconic. But I've watched it every year for 40 years or whatever. I don't know if it's just the changing times, but it's getting more and more cruel to Rudolph. Everyone treats Rudolph like a POS in that special, including Santa himself.
Well, it's unfair because, I mean, in general, Rudolph has a pretty heroic resume of saving the holiday once or twice. So I don't know why you'd need to be dumping on him. I think it's jealousy.
Jealousy, I think, and there's an arc, obviously, to Rudolph that it pays off for him in the special itself. But I think some people have to look in the mirror after that adventure. All right, so Mike Haas, WWL, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill both score, and the Saints make a stop late to get a 17-10 win over the Browns. And just like the Falcons, later Brownies, they gone. They're also eliminated from contention, Marc, a game that they had a lead here, didn't they?
They had a 10-0 lead, and we're talking about the third coldest game in the history of Cleveland football. And you're playing a team from New Orleans that operates inside a dome. And who was tougher down the stretch? The Saints were. I mean, in a Saints defense, it's been really hot and cold. So I look at this, and I think this is one where, you know, this assumption that Kevin Stefanski escapes unhindered from this year's disaster. I would point to two possessions, the final two possessions for Cleveland, that it's 17-10 in the fourth quarter with about 6 minutes left, and they have Watson throw the ball on essentially 2nd and 2 and 3rd and 2, and they're both incompletions from Watson. Just another show of disjointedness inside the attack. They get the ball again. All right, it is 2nd and 10 and 3rd and 10 from the New Orleans 15. And then this time, Watson hits Donovan Peoples-Jones, catchable ball, David Njoku, catchable ball. Both are dropped. This is happening to Cleveland kind of week after week. And on 4th and 10, a completely out of his head Watson is tossed to the ground. The game is over. He had 62 yards passing in the first half. If I'm not mistaken, he had the worst passer rating of his entire career in this game. It's like he also does a couple things where you're like, I can see the old Deshaun Watson just for a minute or two here. But this game is all about the fact that the Saints decided, they even reported this before the game. I don't know why this would get to the press, but that this was going to be a Taysom Hill game. They were just going to lean on him big time. And that's sort of exactly what happened. I think he had like 85% of their yards in the first half, somewhere around there. And it was not a splashy situation by the Saints offense on any level, but they got enough done. And you're playing a Browns offense that looks way worse than it did a month ago.
110 yards from scrimmage from Kamara. Kamara's had a couple of manly games here in a day where the Saints only had 244. This was the coldest game in Saints history, which isn't a huge surprise. Of all the cold games here this week, this was the coldest. So the passing game numbers, they're not surprisingly low. But this game, which I watched the end of, there was no one in the crowd, Dan. I mean, I don't blame him, but it was so cold that there had to have been less than 5,000 fans there. I would guess by the end of that.
But I want to know about those 5,000.
Right? They were all
some of them
close.
could be literally frozen.
I mean, how do you not take the names and numbers of every fan that went to this game and send them a Rolex or something, because they are the diehard of the diehard. If you're one of those fans that are listening to this game, wherever you were in these sub-zero temperatures, I have so much respect for you, but I'm also wondering what's going on in the bigger picture of your life.
Saints are still alive for one more week. They got some bad luck when the Eagles lost that game. That means the Eagles will be playing next week, their starters, and have a lot to play for, assuming against the Saints. And they could knock out the Saints then. But the Saints stay alive for one more week. And it was hard not to think about how they had swung and missed for Deshaun Watson. They really thought they had Watson, and they didn't get him, and then they end up ending the season.
Right. And, yes, if the Bucs lose tomorrow, they're playing tomorrow, right? Yes. They're playing the Arizona Cardinals in primetime tomorrow. 3-way tie at 6-9. Nice. Let's move. It's Christmas Eve. Let's move. Let's move. Let's move. Let's move. Up next.
Up last.
Up last. We got one more. Is this it? Let's go to Nashville, where it was cold as hell there, too. 2 o'clock start. What?
Davis gets the snap. Looking. Stepping to his left. Mills throwing to the end zone. Caught by Brandon Cooks. Touchdown, Houston. Flag is down, but the Texans take the lead.
And this should stand as a touchdown to
Illegal
Cooks.
use of hands to the face defense, number 20. That penalty's declined. Result of the play is a touchdown.
And the Texans have the lead, 19-14, 2:52 to go in the fourth, and they're going to go for 2 right here.
That is a man that I don't think we've heard this year, Marc Vandermeer, Kilt. Maybe once we heard him. Yeah, we heard him once, and now twice. You know, Justin, and good for the Texans. But let's get the sad Hard Knocks music on, because you just got beat by the Texans.
At home.
Which I said was going to happen on our preview show. I said
we all said it felt like it could happen, and it did. Davis Mills threw a 6-yard touchdown pass to Brandon Cooks. Yes, with 2:52 to play. The Texans snap a 9-game losing streak by beating the Titans 19-14. As I said, this game was delayed because of power grid issues connected to this vicious cold snap across the country, really, in many parts, except for here where it was 73 and sunny. But Gravedigger, you got 126 and a touch from Henry, but that's a little misleading too.
Well, it's interesting. This is the 3rd straight game that Henry's gone over 100 yards, and the Titans have failed to score more than 20 points. I guess they got to 21 barely on a garbage time touchdown. But yeah, usually, common knowledge would say if the Titans can run the ball well, if Henry's successful, then their offense is successful, but it just hasn't been the case. They cannot drop back to pass without giving up just crazy numbers of sacks. And with Malik Willis under center, plus the Titans are one of the most injured teams. Honestly, good for Houston. I'm glad they got a win. I'm happy for Lovie Smith. This Titans season feels like a lost season with all the injuries that have happened, and I'm not even super upset because I kind of accepted it a couple weeks ago.
Yikes. Well, you're going to have to watch them play the Jaguars in Week 18 with a division on the line, so I don't care how much you've accepted it. That's going to be a big spot for a playoff spot, no matter what happens next week in Week 17.
With Malik Willis starting, and if we're trying to evaluate, is Malik Willis a franchise quarterback or whatever, he's now started 3 games. He's appeared in 7 games total. He's 31 for 61 on the season, which is 50.8% for just 276 yards. That's 4.5 yards per attempt, 0 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions. And the one thing that we thought he could do really well, no matter what, run the ball. He has 27 carries for only 123 yards, and he scored his first touchdown today. He honestly hasn't looked like that great of a runner outside of that nice touchdown run today. And, he looked pretty good as a runner in the preseason, but he hasn't shown it in the NFL. And I know his supporting cast is so banged up, and his best receiver is a rookie in Treylon Burks, and he was down 3 starting offensive linemen today. But I don't know. He doesn't really look like the guy.
Absolutely brutal. I can't believe it happened. But as you pointed out when we were texting back and forth, Justin, earlier today, in addition to a lot of bad losses, these injuries, and the roster wasn't deep enough to handle it this year, and they just went into a tailspin. And what I was saying about Henry, yes, he didn't have the 200-yard game like he always has against Houston. He had 126, but outside the 48-yard touchdown run, he was held to 3.5 yards per carry. So the running game was on balance, not great. The passing game is horrendous, and they didn't get enough stops on defense. Good for Lovie Smith, like you said. They have played the Cowboys, Chiefs, and Titans down to the wire here. They get another win. Lovie can make a case here if they finish strong. I got these guys playing hard. Now give me some better players. Give me another year. We shall see.
They've been a well-coached team for like a month plus. And frankly, like I've been on Mike Vrabel all year long as coach of the year. Not the case now. Justin, I don't know if this is like, my thing is when I'm watching Tennessee and the way that Houston just ripped down the field on that 5-play touchdown drive to take the lead. I know they didn't get the 2-point conversion. It's like, I know they're banged up. All sorts of teams are banged up. It's been worse for Tennessee, but I don't see a team that like has the same identity they had 6 weeks ago. And I don't know if it's ever coming back, because the general manager that crafted that was his entire vision, has essentially been told, we don't want your vision, you're out of here. You have no idea what's going to happen with Ryan Tannehill. The team could look completely different. They need to restock on offense. Like, this could be a completely different looking offense than the one that we've been used to for 3 or 4 years.
I hope so. It needs to be. At this point, this version of the Titans has run its course. Henry's only going to be another year older next year. Tannehill has no guaranteed money on his contract next year. And the Texans get a win and maintain the top pick in the draft, which is kind of nice for them, I guess.
Here's the good news, Justin. It's Christmas. That's
Merry
the
Christmas.
That's the cue for the Christmas music. We're going to sign off now. We have one more game that's being played tonight, Las Vegas at Pittsburgh. Marc, you locked up the Steelers.
Yes, I did.
Gregg did not come clean with us or the audience that he had locked up the team of ATN and took the loss. So
what do you mean did not come clean?
Well, you try to hide it from us.
To Graver. I forgot. I didn't forget.
I believe you hid it from the audience.
That's the host's job.
Well, I did. I brought it like Woodward and Bernstein. I had to bring it up from deep within.
It was my gift. It was my gift to you, to Justin, to Marc. Let everyone back into the competition.
You just paralleled yourself to the two men that broke Watergate, essentially. I don't get the...
I compared myself to Santa, one of the great men out there.
Well, you both have issues.
I have to say this. Everyone, it really doesn't matter what you celebrate. Have a great holiday. Have a great weekend. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. What other holidays we got going on? All of them. Celebrate it with your families. Thank you to everybody for listening. We'll be back on Monday with 2 shows, a recap of the remaining games ahead of Monday Night Football, and then Gregg's MNF recap with the great Jordan Rodrigue. Wow, that's a big Monday. Thank you to everybody for listening. And you boys, have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to all.
Merry Christmas to you both and to all listening.
Justin Graver. Love everybody. Happy Xmas. War is over. Heed the call. That's it. Now it's time to begin Christmas.
We allowed to use this music?
I don't know. Probably not. Don't tell any shadowy league figures. Sydney, that is it for the Christmas Eve edition of the Around the NFL podcast. Thank you to everyone who, if you're watching on Periscope,
Merry Christmas.
That's a good job by you.
Happy holidays across the globe.
Yes. So thank you very much for listening. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Gregg, happy Hanukkah.
Thanks.
And we will see you on Tuesday. Until then, this is Dan Hanzus signing off for Quiet Storm, the mailman, the boss, and new money behind the glass.